Meet Bray Aberdeen, son of pig farmers and a happy family man. His rotund shape might have you already casting some stereotypes about this man, but let me tell you something you may not believe. Despite his outward appearance of a slovenly gourmand, Bray is actually one of the finest endurance athletes this great country has ever seen. You just give his beloved sister a little tickle, and that's all it takes to awaken the inner beast athlete inside him. And once awoken, it is as if the man no longer produces lactic acid, allowing him to pursue you to the ends of earth without pity or remorse or fear. And he absolutely will not stop ever until you are dead. The Aberdeen Marathons were born to honor and celebrate this man's athletic prowess. 5 marathons for John Marston to attempt to complete. 5 marathons that must abide by a few rules. Bray Aberdeen must be enraged and in pursuit. Bray Aberdeen must not die before the marathon is complete. And no horses allowed. To prepare for the marathons, I first need to make sure John is ready. And to start, I gave him an incredible mustache, much like the one that helped Mark Spitz take gold in the 1972 Olympics. And I think this orange tight shirt should be both aerodynamic and breathe well. But I don't really think these chaps would be suitable for such an athletic event, but John seems to think that the tassels will look cool as hell blowing in the wind as he runs. So whatever, it's his legs, not mine. And last but certainly not least, to top it all off, the always overpowered rat flat cap. And with the preparations complete, let the games begin!
Don't be shy, partner. No such thing as a stranger here.
Howdy, mister.
The first marathon event is really more of a ceremonial warm-up if anything, for this marathon has but a simple goal: acquire a friendly photograph of John and Bray together as memorabilia for all the good fun times they are about to spend together. The task seems simple enough, as there is a photographer right nearby on the north end of Saint Denis. We ran through the swamps and into Saint Denis, but when I got to the photo studio, he wouldn't take the photo because we were disturbing the peace. Butthole! Bray ended up getting locked in the studio for a while John went outside to wait out the investigation. But if the professional photographer won't take our portrait, then I guess John is gonna have to do it himself. And no, that snapshot doesn't count. They both need to be in the picture. So I figured, hey, I can just use the selfie mode on this camera, right? Well, after getting Bray to come out and play, I ran ahead of him a little bit to give John some time to set up the camera. But it seems that if you're in combat, that you're just not allowed to take selfies. What to do, what to do. I got it! Perhaps the time-honored tradition of a mirror selfie will work. The only nearby mirror I could think of offhand was the bar back at the fancy saloon in Saint Denis. But that mirror was noisy and it didn't seem like it would make for a good photo. I broke into the mayor's mansion thinking surely such a large estate would have a mirror in it, but I couldn't find one. But then I remembered my old friend Algernon Wasp and his eccentric little shop. And in that shop was a nice big full-length mirror. This will work splendidly.
Why didn't you tell me we had...
I gave Tammy a tickle and got to running with Bray on my tail. Futzing with the camera angles made me slip up and allowed Bray to smack the rat flat cap right off of John's head. Why even take a commemorative photo if the rat flat cap is missing? So I turned around and we danced a bit over it as I attempted to get it back onto John's head. This little hiccup taught me a maneuver where I need to jog away for a while, only to then turn around and sprint back at full speed to create a large enough gap between the two of us in order to give me time to pick up something off the ground. A little something that is going to be the heart and soul of many of these challenges. But with the rat flat cap back on John's head, it was off to the mirror. and as I drew close, I dropped the hammer to give John a lead long enough to let him set up the camera before Bray arrived. Success! The Aberdeen Marathons are officially underway! But no more lighthearted shenanigans. It's time to get serious.
Don't be shy, partner. No such thing as a stranger here.
For the baby Gator Marathon, we shall be revisiting something I've done previously, which is to get a baby alligator from the swamps of Lemoyne to Abigail before it rots. So we'll need to leave the pig farm, make the short run to this area of the swamp that I know from previous videos as prime breeding grounds for alligators, and then with a baby gator in hand, hightail it all the way across the map to Beecher's Hope.
Well, ain't this a rare...
Oh yeah, baby alligator marathon, let's go! So I should mention that these marathons are actually the first time I'm ever playing Red Dead with mouse and keyboard. And yeah, I have practically zero muscle memory at this point. Oops. So I got Bray all riled up again and sallied forth after not shooting him in the face immediately. The first few attempts I tried coming from this direction and crossing this covered bridge, but I kept triggering a Lemoyne Raider ambush. Sometimes I'd die to the Raiders, but on some attempts where I didn't, something even worse happened. All the damned crocodigators despawned. Not wanting to run around for God knows how long waiting for an alligator to respawn, I started again. But this time we were going through the swamps to reach the breeding grounds from the east. A baby gator! Success! That muscle memory thing got me again, damn it. Eventually I had an attempt where I got to the gator with a good lead on Bray. But Jesus, the animation to pick it up took forever, and he knifed it right out of my hands before proceeding to fillet the shit out of John. Another attempt and I was once again able to pick up the baby alligator. And once again, he quickly ran me down and knifed it out of John's hand. I got away before he could shank me dead and started an end-around maneuver for another gator pickup. Going in for the alligator snatch on this attempt is when I discovered something amazing. If I kick the carcass or whatever I'm trying to pick up just before grabbing it, it will trigger a much faster pickup animation. Whew. But Bray once again knifed the gator out of John's hands and gutted John to end the attempt. I suppose I could also switch to the larger radar so those of you watching at home might be able to see his position just a little bit better. Okay, so on the next attempt I left Bray in the dust so I would have a long enough lead to get the gator out of the muddy swamps. But even on dry lands, John just wasn't fast enough while carrying the gator and Bray kept catching up. But I think there's an even more critical piece to this puzzle that I need to solve. So at the beginning of every attempt, I have to disarm him of his pistol in order to make him pursue John beyond the borders of the pig farm. And sometimes after doing this he pulls a knife, but sometimes he doesn't. I'm not sure if the knife extends his reach at all, but it seems that the damage it does compared to his raw fist was making the gator get dropped pretty easy. And then any successful attacks that do hit John do far more damage than when he just hits him with his fists. And even worse, there seems to be a chance of him rolling a crit that just outright kills John. So I can't allow him to chase me with a knife anymore. I couldn't figure out any rhyme or reason as to what makes him pull it or not, so I'll just have to shoot it out of his hands if he does. But making matters even more fun is that he seems to have a variable amount of knives hidden in his overalls. Sometimes I have to shoot one out of his hands, sometimes I have to shoot like 3 out of his hands. This guy, I tell you, no wonder everyone loves him. On the next attempt, he did some magnet hands horse magic shit to summon a knife off the ground, but only ended up having one more on him after I shot it out of his hands. I acquired a baby doo-doo-doo and started to run. He would catch up and lay hands on it, but John was usually able to hold on. But even when the gator was dropped, if Bray would punch John, the damage dealt was now trivial. I felt that between having no knife and the new speedrunning trick of kicking the carcass up before picking it, that I'd have no problems finishing this marathon.
That's it?
And it seemed to be going that way as the two did a dance across the countryside. But eventually we reached the rail bridge over the Dakota River and started crossing it. All was going smooth and clear until it wasn't. There was no time to get the gator out of there, so we ran. Both John and Bray got off the bridge before the train could turn them into a smooth red paste. But what fate befell the poor baby gator? Whew. It was still intact and the marathon continued. Until another train appeared. But this time the only place to go was off the edge of the railroad bridge. John jumped off with the gator and survived the fall. But what about Bray? Bray, jump Bray! Oh. Bray got Ray Broward. Damn it.
Don't be shy, partner. No such thing as a stranger here.
Another turn of the wheel and off we went yet again. I acquired a baby gator and got out of the swamps before Bray caught up to me, but then when my man caught up and threw a right hook that smacked 2 stars of shit off the face of my baby gator, I just... incredible respect for that man's athleticism. And no respect for that sneaky snake though. Past Face Rock and over the animal bridge. The whole time with Bray landing shots on the poor baby gator's dead face. It was all going well until this guy, this piece of work, just started unloading on the baby gator with his shotgun. Why? Why?
You're gonna regret this. Goddamn asshole.
Well, I don't know why, but I remedied that situation and kicked the carcass back into John's hands. I made it across the railroad bridge without a train incident. And exhausted and poisoned, we crossed the Dakota River. The goal was within reach. Night fell as I reached the perimeter of Beecher's Hope. My heart skipped a beat as I heard the growls of the nearby lawcat that resides outside the gate. But on this night, the lawcat didn't come for me or the baby gator. And then as I passed through the gate and set out to find Abigail, I learned something new to me. Apparently, if you bring an aggressor into Beecher's Hope, you just tip over and die. Oh well, good enough for me. The Baby Gators Marathon is complete.
Don't be shy, partner. No such thing as a stranger here.
Hey, partner.
This one might get a little bit chilly, so I'm giving Johnny Boy a coat and some mittens. So the most famous and most taxing of all the Aberdeen Marathons is the Mountaineering Marathon, or as it is colloquially known as, Micah Ball. After leaving the pig farm, the athletes will need to do a long distance run across the map into the Grizzlies West region. Then they must climb to the top of Mount Hagen to collect the corpse of a Mr. Micah Bell. Corpse in hand, they must now descend Mount Hagen and cross Big Valley towards Mount Shan, where they then must climb that mountain. And upon climbing Mount Shan, the marathon ends when the corpse of Micah Bell is placed within the sundial at the top of the mountain. And quick technical note, the game doesn't actually let you interact with the body of Micah Bell, so I'll have a hotkey set up to spawn a surrogate in its place when I reach Mount Hagen. FYI. The first attempt took me about 15 minutes to run from the pig farm to the base of Mount Hagen. I started the ascent. I was a bit worried that the snow would slow down or outright stop Bray, and thus suck all the joy out of this challenge. But I couldn't have been more wrong. With his incredible strength, he cut through the deep snow with all the difficulty that a locomotive might experience while chugging through a cloud. However, he did get a little bit lost, which bought John enough time to spawn the surrogate and pick it up. But now he had to head back up that hill and into the den of the great Aberdeen mountain monster. Holy shit. Get up, John. Oh my god. So I went into the first attempt drug-free, and in 10 minutes flat, the cold and Bray's giant fist pounded my health cores down to nothing, and I had barely moved the Micah Ball. So a steering committee meeting was held, and it was decided that the athlete can bring a small amount of nutrition to help with core replenishment. Nutrition in the form of 4 cans of beans. The next attempt, we reached the Cumberland Falls crossing, and silly Bray got stuck. Weird, since he had no issues the first time. I thought maybe his foot was caught under a rock or something, so I gave him a little shove. And this is where I learned that if you tackle someone into deep water, you just go ahead and hold them under until they drowned. Whoopsie! But the thing is, it took like 12 minutes to reach this crossing, and I really didn't want to have a coin flip this far into the run, decide if it was going to fail or not, so I adjusted my future routes to cross the river using the rope bridge north of Valentine. Valentine, really? Valentine! The next attempt was underway, and the rope bridge served its purpose splendidly. 22 minutes into the run, and the Micah was acquired. The return trip through Bray's territory was equally as horrifying. Fist after fist after fist after fist. So, you might have noticed that I'm just taking punches and not fighting back at all. And this is intentional. Bray has like triple the hit points of a typical NPC, but they're still limited. And even the seemingly innocent action of blocking a punch does do a little damage to him. And at this point, I have no idea how long this slog is going to last, so I don't want to risk taking any hit points from him so we don't end up in a situation where he punches himself to death when I'm like 5 minutes from the finish line, okay? I made a little more progress this time versus the previous attempt before, John fell down and broke his crown. Sad. So my original plan was to follow the path marked on the map down the mountain, but I now saw this as foolish. That last attempt took me 12 minutes to move the Micah Ball this far, and that isn't very far at all. And with the snow slowing John down and not stopping Bray at all, I knew I needed to change the plan to get out of the snow as quick as possible. So for future attempts, we're going over the edge. The next attempt had a little speed bump when some spectators got onto the course and interrupted the race. But in due time we made it to Mount Hagen and started the ascent. John picked up the rat and it was time to go over the edge. A strategy that 100% was the better choice, as the steeper incline allowed me to use gravity to my advantage much more efficiently. I seemed to be able to just kick the ball a bit easier and could even occasionally lure Bray into kicking it for me as well. And then occasionally gravity would just take over on its own and do some really solid work. And you may have noticed I'm carrying a bow this time. Well, the bow is there to serve as a tool in case the corpse ends up getting stuck in some outcropping that is just a little bit too difficult to reach. Then, just a little dynamite-infused boop, and I can keep making progress. Once I got the Micah Ball off the mountain, it was again the familiar game of punch the cargo. Most punches did nothing, but every so often he'd knock Micah off John's shoulder, and the little dance would resume. But in this dance, I was now learning that the trick of kicking the corpse before picking it up seemed to be a fair bit harder to pull off with a human body than it was with a baby alligator. Some O'Driscolls tried to take the ball for me, but they failed. I started making my way up the trail to Mount Shan. I got not too far before an issue arose. Heading uphill drains John's stamina pretty quickly, and Bray's big hammer fist started feeling more and more effective at knocking the corpse off my shoulder. The narrow passage also made the run away then run back dance a little bit more difficult to accomplish, but I still believe this strategy could carry me to the top. The problem, however, that arose was this sneaky ass snake that bit me an hour earlier in the run. With the venom in my blood, I had to consume all my beans far too soon. And once I was out of beans, the venom did its thing to completely drain my health core. And with a drained health core, I no longer could regenerate hit points every time Bray punched me. Would it be possible to get the Micah to the sundial before getting all the life punched out of John? No. So the steering committee reconvened, and ginseng was lifted from the list of banned substances.
Don't be shy, partner. No such thing as a stranger here.
Attempt number 7. The wolves won.
Don't be shy, partner.
Attempt number 9. I got the rat off the mountain and was crossing through Big Valley when a new challenger appeared. We both managed to survive the attack, but in his tussle with the bear, Bray realized he still had another knife tucked away in his overalls. I tried to disarm him of it, but that was all the life he had left in his body.
Don't be shy, partner. No such thing as a stranger here.
Attempt number 10. We were crossing through Big Valley when an enraged deer laid into Bray and knocked him into the water, once again causing him to freeze in place. I set Micah down and let him punch me a few times to help regain his courage to come chase me. We proceeded out Mount Shan, and 55 minutes into the run, I finally laid eyes on the sundial. I was so close! But when I drew closer to the sundial, I realized there isn't exactly a nice beginner-friendly paved trail up to the landmark. Would I be able to climb this cliff face while carrying the Micah Ball? I was not, and now Micah's corpse was left precariously close to a sheer cliff face. I spent a few minutes trying to juke Bray away, long enough so I could pick up the corpse and try again. Would this be it? Oh my god, he's still going.
Damn.
To be honest, at this point, I was mostly stunned that John took that fall without dying. But then to look up and see Bray flying down the cliffside more fleet-footed than the world's best mountain goat, with Micah tumbling after, and I felt like I was a little bit screwed. Some progress was made dragging Micah back up the mountain, and a few more falls were survived, but Bray's incredible gift at mountain climbing made the task of getting Micah up the cliffside an arduous one at best, and soon John fell one too many times.
Don't be shy, partner. No such thing as a stranger here.
Partner?
The 12th attempt was one that apparently pissed off nature. En route to the mountain, we got ambushed by some wolves. Then, 3 minutes later, we got ambushed by even more wolves. The rat was snatched up and I made my way down the mountain where a deer, a stupid stick-headed deer, decided he needed to take a stab at John as well. But he failed like an idiot deer would fail. Then, 2 minutes after that deer, more wolves. I was fed up with wolves at this point, so they got to eat some fucking dynamite. So after 3 wolves and 1 deer attack, I thought nature had finally given up. But I was wrong again, as 10 minutes later, nature came back and served both John and Bray a big, fat, tasty bear claw.
Don't be shy, partner. Goddamn son of a bitch!
Attempt 13, and are you kidding me? A goat? A flipping goat just knocked Micah out of my hands. I can't be expected to remember everything I've ever experienced in this game, but I don't think I've ever just seen a goat walking around out in the wild.
You! Stay right there and don't...
The O'Driscolls showed up again and died as O'Driscolls will, and then we started to chase up the mountain. An experience much the same as the previous attempts, where I was getting absolutely lambasted by Bray's fists the entire time. But an hour and 4 minutes since I tickled Tammy, and I had finally set eyes on the sundial. This time I had a different strategy. Instead of attempting to carry Micah up that steep cliff face where he might fall, I was just going to jam him into this crevice and then climb to the top. Then while Bray set off to find a different path to the sundial, I would just have to go rat fishing. Jesus.
Don't be shy, partner. No such thing as a stranger here.
Hey, partner.
So if there's anything better than endurance athletics, it is endurance athletics where you need to shoot some guns during it. Behold, the Van Horn Biathlon. For the Van Horn Biathlon, we will need to leave the pig farm and run to the shithole of Van Horn. Once in Van Horn, we will need to, tickle everybody until they are immobilized on the ground from laughter. And once everyone has been tickled, we then need to run back to the open grave at the Aberdeen pig farm and die in it to Bray's hands. Easy peasy. Except, to make it a little less easy peasy, we are only allowed to bring a knife into Van Horn. So at the beginning of each run, after I disarm Bray of his gun and knives, I have to then let him disarm John before the running part of the event can start. I'm also allowing gold cores and 3 weak health potions during this event. In an early attempt, I cleared all the hostiles that spawned after the first tickle, but then I saw more people on the other side of town who hadn't been tickled. And after tickling those people, I realized that the people in the part of the town that I had previously tickled had been untickled. So it seems that the true tickling of all the Van Hornians might not actually be possible. So a quick rule adjustment was made where I need to start the Tickle Fest in front of the saloon in the middle of town and only need to go until all the red dots that spawn get properly tickled. A few more attempts were made that all had the same fate. Once the hive is tickled and the whole town just starts going apeshit, nothing but chaos ensues. NPCs start executing other NPCs. Someone shot Bertram in the back, oh my! And every single time, Bray catches enough strays that he doesn't survive the fight. But I think Bray getting cut down so quick is actually a symptom of a different problem. Remember earlier when I said I had to disarm him of 1 to 3 knives? Well, I swear to God the game has started trolling me during the biathlon attempts, because now, instead of having to maybe disarm 1 to 3 knives, for some obtuse reason, this piece of shit is now pulling 9 to 12 knives for me to disarm before every attempt. And I can't seem to be able to just slap the knives out of his hand like I do with the pistol, so I gotta throw lead at the problem. And all those little disarms do some damage to him, so after 12 fudging knives, he is left with a normal human's amount of hit points. What? What's that you say? You think I'm just making this up? There's no way he has 12 knives hidden in his dirty overalls? Well, listen here, you little shit.
I'm gonna kill you, you! I'm gonna get it!
I tried a barn full of purely random shit, trying to see if I could get him to never pull a knife on me. And I don't know if what I found is an actual strategy, or if some random cosmic rays flipped a bit in my computer where the random number generator is seeded from. But it seems that if I let him hold on to his pistol until he was at the very edge of the property where he would no longer chase me, and then go back to disarm him, he would no longer pull a dozen knives out of his magic overalls. A few more attempts were had where Bray eventually did get cut down, but it definitely felt like he lasted a lot longer than before. So at this point, I think the only thing holding me back from completing this challenge was a pure skill issue.
Oh, God damn! Son of a bitch!
And just like that, all the red dots of Van Horn had been tickled, and there was only one thing left to do. Yes! Punch me! Punch me, Daddy!
Don't be shy, partner. No such thing as a stranger here.
Alas, we have reached the final event of the Aberdeen Marathons, the Marathon of Flames, the lighting of the torches. And yes, unlike the modern Olympic tradition, this event happens at the end of the games. And unlike the modern Olympics, the flame is already burning and we just need to throw the unlit torches into the fire. The flames in this marathon are the many burn piles scattered around Armadillo, obviously. But what are the torches? Why, none other than Bray and Tammy Aberdeen themselves. For this closing ceremony, we must lead them both to Armadillo before cleansing them of their sins by burning them alive in the flames. And given the amount of pomp and circumstance of this event, I think it best that we let Tammy change into her best clothes before starting.
Hey!
Alrighty, dishonor their mother and the final marathon is underway. We ran and we ran, and it seems that Tammy was blessed with the same Aberdeen endurance athleticism that her brother has. We crossed the heartlands, and another idiot deer made an idiot's attempt at knocking over John. At dawn, we crossed the rail bridge, and no train reared its little train head until we were safely off the tracks. We set out across the upper Montana when a snag was hit. Bray got stuck again. Just letting him throw punches at me didn't seem to free him this time, so I ran around for a little bit thinking, which is when Tammy then went and got stuck as well. I gave Bray a tackle, making sure not to aim it into the deep water, and that did the job to get him free. So I gave Tammy a tackle as well, and huzzah! They were both now free! I didn't want to risk having them get stuck in the water anymore, so I plotted a wide detour across the Owanjua Dam, and we continued forth. I'm fairly certain our marathon saved this rabbit from a foxy demise. We crossed the dam and passed through tall trees without any external incidents. And in fact, we completed the rest of the running leg of the challenge without any incidents at all. And then finally, after 40 minutes of running from the Brays, we have reached the Flames of Armadillo. Could I be so lucky in that all I need to do is just run around a flame pile and watch them run straight into it? No, doesn't seem so. So a little strategizing will be needed. Tammy shouldn't be an issue to deal with as she can be lassoed, but the sheer size of Bray makes it impossible to use the lasso on him. From previous tests, I know that if I shoot him in the little toesies, that he will stumble to the ground and potentially into the flames. But I don't want to start whittling away at his hit points just quite yet, so I figured I might try some grapple and shove attempts to push him into the fire first. I got into position for a grapple, and Tammy decided she wanted to have the first go at it. Okay, no problem. But then as I was looking for an opportunity to shove her, Bray just up and negated all the theorizing I had done about how to get him into the fire and self-emulated himself in front of us.
No!
With Bray taken care of, the rest of the marathon is going to be a cakewalk.
You animal!
And there we have it. In the ashes of Armadillo, the inaugural Aberdeen Marathons have come to a close. That one might have been a little bit dark, but that's the nature of sports. Oh, what a story that was. You should consider subscribing if you haven't already. For if you don't, you might one day find yourself being chased by a dozen half-sized Bray Aberdeens. And nobody wants that to happen.